So in the past, we've looked at several videos where we identified how to build a collection with a specific budget in mind. But there are some watch brands out there that have such an expansive collection of watches underneath their umbrella. You're able to probably build a full comprehensive collection with just one brand and their watches. And that's what I wanted to do here today, kind of switch the, I would say the overall stride in what we're doing and look at how to build a collection with just one brand, and starting with one of the brands that's probably going to be the most suitable first place to start, and that is Seiko. So how this video is going to work, very similar to other collection videos that we've done. They're gonna be specific personas that are gonna be representative of all different types of collecting philosophies. So this is just a way to give an idea and give the personality of a collector and giving a bunch of different paths, so we have not just one conventional way of going about things. Also, some other points of consideration for each one of these personas. Going to be looking at about 3 to 4 watches each, so it doesn't get so long. All the personas are also based on some general points, but also specific to the brand itself. So you'll see some of these like Seiko 5 collector or JDM Fanatic that are very specific to a Seiko type of experience and collecting experience. And then also, because Seiko is so just well known for just modding capabilities for some of their watches, I'm just going to address it up front. We're not gonna be looking at any modding possibilities because that would get just turn into a wormhole, let's just be frank. Now, before we jump into this video, I do wanna mention a blog looking at around 60 to 70 different Seiko watches and collections, probably over 100 watches mentioned in this blog on our website. Check it out, link in the description below, the best Seiko watches for 2021. And while you're there, definitely check out the different collection of watches that we have for sale as an authorized dealer of all the brands, over 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and also a full factory warranty for everything that you purchase. And 9 out of every $10 goes right back into this content that we're creating here. So in this video, we're gonna be looking at a few different personas just to highlight the ones that we're gonna be looking at. The first one is gonna be checking off the boxes. So a type of individual that wants a watch for every type of scenario, and Seiko certainly has watches in a wide variety and range, so have no issues here. Then moving into the diver fanatic, one of the things that Seiko is probably best known for is their production of dive watches, so this only makes sense to include. Also going to be looking at the JDM Lover, so this is the Japanese domestic market. Because Seiko is a Japanese brand, they make many watches for the Japanese market, but they do kind of go all around the world in terms of being acquired by many enthusiasts out there. Then you of course have the Seiko 5 Lover. So Seiko 5 is kind of that gateway, that perfect gateway into the world of watches for so many people out there. So we're going to be looking at a collection there. And then to round it out, we have the Seiko Purist. Now this is the type of individual that is pretty much going to spend usually the most money on Seikos, but also going to be looking at watches that are exemplary and showing what Seiko is best at, as well as looking back at their history and getting watches that represent that. But now to begin, let's look at the check off the boxes type of persona. So this is something where I wanna have a pretty well-rounded collection with around 3 pieces here. So looking at kind of that field everyday watch, so that casual watch, then you also have something that could be more of a dress everyday type of piece out there. And then you also will have your dive watch. So to begin looking at field watches, and this is a range that I don't think many people consider that much for Seiko. I think people just naturally go into the world of their dive watches and don't consider their history in field watches. Now there's a few different ranges that you can go about here in regards to their field watch, just production and also options out there. Now you could go with the SRPG27. This is a model in the Seiko 5 family that was just unveiled. It's basically a new creation of the Seiko 5 field watch. This is going to offer just a lot of just wearability with this 39.4 millimeter case, getting the upgraded 4R series of movements inside, 100 meters of water resistance. So that is a great entry door if you want to go there. If price isn't as much of an issue, you can then jump up to that of the Alpinist collection. Now there's been a wide variety of different Alpinist models that could probably be thrown into the mix here. One to maybe reference that is probably my personal favorite is the SPB 157. So this is going to have that traditional cathedral handset, but one crown at the 3 o'clock position. Over manufacturing in regards to much of what is being done. Sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance, and also getting the upgraded 6R35 movement within with that 70-hour power reserve. And the other reason why I like these Alpinist models is I think they have more capability in terms of being a dress watch. If you did pair it with the right strap, they are, I would say, more everyday watches, and I don't imagine people maybe leaning on this as much, but considering many individuals now are going very casual, I think that could definitely do the job in certain situations where you might need it. Then moving into that next watch, kind of the more, I would say, hybridized kind of watch. You can either go really dressy, or more dressy, or you could go into the world of some type of complication. Now, I wanted to look at the Presage Sharp Edge collection. Now you could look at the Cocktail Times, but I wanted something a little bit different here. And I think the Sharp Edge collection does a very good job with kind of marrying some attributes that would maybe be suitable for somebody that wants a dress watch with kind of this dial finishing that Seiko is probably maybe best in class at for the money, but also getting some added versatility when it comes to water resistance, sapphire crystal, and things of that sort. Now the Sharp Edge collection, we've looked at some in the past, the SPB 167 with that blue dial. There are a variety of different variants here that you could go for. Pretty reasonable wearing dimensions. I put it side by side with the Tissot Gentleman Powermatic 80 Silicium. And if you're putting this watch next to that watch, a watch that is very much regarded as one of the best watches under $1,000 from a Swiss watchmaking perspective, it really does, I think, bode well for this type of watch if you're able to do that level of comparison. I will also mention, as kind of an honorable mention here, the SPB 121 or this Sharp Edge GMT collection. Now this is a newer collection that had kind of just been unveiled by Seiko, but to get some GMT complication in this kind of up finish that comes from these Sharp Edge models, it is going to raise the price a bit. So you're gonna go north of over $1,000 here, but these look fantastic, and I think definitely wanna throw them into the mix as a point of consideration. And then to round it out from the diver perspective, these watches have gotten a ton of love, and for good reason. And this is gonna be those SPB 140s. So the SPB 143 was probably the one initially that got the most coverage, but you could also look at some other just lineups within this range. Some of these are going to be limited edition models, but I think the number one reason why these got so much love was the wearing dimensions on these. So 40.5 millimeters of the case size, suitable water resistance as you would expect, pretty reasonable thickness of 13 millimeters, and the price is gonna be a little bit higher, but these just look fantastic. Some of the best looking Seiko divers. Seiko really knocked it out of the park with these. Another offshoot of these that is just a similar in its construction is the new SPB 213. This one completely caught my eye. This is a 140th anniversary limited edition, so it is limited in production, but that white dial, blue bezel, that combination is just so striking. You saw recently with Omega in the Tokyo edition for the Olympics that just came out, probably the best looking Seamaster Diver 300 in my opinion, and I think very much the same just design attributes have been carried over here in a more affordable package with Seiko and their design DNA. So next we're going to be looking at the dive watch Fanatic. Now there are a ton of pillars when you're looking at dive watches from Seiko, and you're probably gonna have to omit something, but I mean, maybe not if you are maybe truly pursuing this idea of collecting every single Seiko dive watch, but for the sake of just the criteria for this video, going to keep it simple with basically 3 separate pillars. Now to begin, I wanna look at the Turtle collection. Now the Turtle collection is so expansive in what you have at your disposal here. A variety of different options to go for. The wearing dimensions, if you are not familiar with it, always wear smaller than that of that case size, so don't be necessarily intimidated by that. This case architecture just leaves such an impression and just reminds me so much of Seiko's just design DNA. This and the SKX kind of layout with the case silhouette are probably some of the most recognizable silhouettes for me when you're looking at that case. Now, in terms of which one to go for, I'm just going to mention the King Turtle here as a great option. You're getting kind of that added just finish in terms of the dial, paying a little bit more money for it. Also getting a ceramic bezel on the outside, similar wearing dimensions as well with really compact lug to lug for its size, 200 meters of water resistance, getting those 4-arm movements inside, and then also a sapphire crystal, which is nice as well. And now another pillar of dive watches from Seiko has to be the Samurai collection. Now you have a variety of different Samurais you could go for as well. Pretty common theme that you're gonna find here with pretty much any Seiko watch. These sharing a lot of the same type of just design attributes from that of the Turtles in regards to their wear. So 44 millimeters here and a pretty compact lug to lug of 48 millimeters across the just entire collection. In terms of which one to go for though, this is a personal favorite of mine, and that is the SRPD 09. Now why I like this version of the Samurai, there's some other versions of Samurai with the waffle textured dial to match that of the King Turtle, but I wanted to move away from those because I didn't want so much redundancy. This dial has that Save the Ocean style dial, which I really do like. I looked at this originally with the SRPC 93, which has this dial. This one comes with an ion plated case. So this is gonna have kind of a darkened case material in stainless steel with some coating, and it's just gonna look, I think, the business with that blue dial. Very rarely are you seeing this kind of combination with the case as well as that very striking and vibrant dial that is almost like a gradient from different shades of blue to black. It really does play with the eye well, and I think this is a good another pillar to get. The Samurai collection, another fan favorite for sure. And now to round it out at the top, just to be a little bit different here, I think there's 2 kind of paths you could take. One would be with the S2 3631, the Darth Tuna that you could go for if you want to spend a bit more money. Larger case size, but similar wearing dimensions across all of these. Now the Tuna collection and the Darth Tuna, probably one of the coolest names that fans have come up with for describing a Seiko watch. Now these are going to be more the professional level of Seiko dive watches out there. I think the Tuna, in terms of its design DNA, I almost want to backtrack from what I said earlier, because I think the Tuna collection is also one of those just most recognizable silhouettes from a case architecture standpoint. These watches being named after looking like a tuna can, which on the surface you're like, all right, is that actually an endearing attribute to have? But they just simply work. They're so Seiko. They're also watches that have a ton of history connected to them in their world of professional dive watches. The other area that you can go to would be looking at some of their more, I would say, limited edition models, or something that's a bit more in line with kind of some fan favorites like the Seiko Willard. These are going to come at an excess of $1,000 in price, very similar to the Darth Tuna, which is going to be even double that. So this is going to be probably more an economical option or choice, but delivers a lot of the same attributes, but probably is leaning a bit more in the pop culture element rather than the true professional dive watch spec that would come with the Darth Tuna. But a lot of that, I think this connection to cinema does very well in watches. You're getting the upgraded Seiko 6R35, so that 70-hour power reserve, so a lot to like there as well. All right, so now we're moving into the JDM Lover. Now, I would probably assume that many people out there are going to probably look in this direction when it comes to Seiko. These are typically watches that have been price competitive because you're dealing with different just market dynamics and being able to acquire these pieces. And quite frankly, Seiko makes some of their best watches for the Japanese market, just point blank. And they've also just developed a ton of icons, or maybe modern icons in a way. And one of those has to be the SKX. Now I mentioned just one of the most recognizable designs within the Seiko DNA. This has to be it. In regards to how these watches have just ascended both in popularity and price kind of simultaneously, now that leaves a little bit open to, I think, some conversation, because are they really the best value? But we can definitely have that debate. I don't think they necessarily are by any means in 2021. These are certainly outdated watches, but still a absolute icon and worthy of that claim, despite that being thrown around quite a bit. The SKX since 1996 has been probably one of the most beloved models from Seiko. It has basically spawned on almost an entire modding community around it and just enthusiasm around one model. It's so rare for a brand to come out with a model that has its own community just tied to a specific watch, but the Seiko SKX is certainly that. In terms of just the specifications and the wear, gonna be very similar to a lot of these modern Seiko 5s that are getting rolled out, those Seiko 5 sports models. Pretty wearable if we're talking about the 007 or the 009, but you also have the 013 that's gonna be a bit more compact. Prices around these now, I mean, we're talking like $350 to $400, which is insane, because you used to be able to get these for under like $200 when I was first getting into watches, maybe like $150, $200. So absolutely insane what's going on here, because you're also getting some pretty outdated specs with these 7S26 movement inside, so no hacking or hand winding. But in terms of being that cornerstone of JDM, just watches that Seiko has been producing and become popular all around the world, the SKX has to be there. Now moving into the next category, we have to look at the Seiko Sarbs. Now this is probably that next kind of cornerstone. Similar things happening here in regards to the type of just ascension in regards to price. Now these haven't been as bad as the SKX, because I think for around $500 to $700, these still are decent value. Not nearly as compelling as they were in the past, but still quite good. Now these watches have kind of just walked that line of everyday casual with dressy components. You kind of get the layout on the dial that is going to be very, I would say, dressy, but also getting some lume and added benefit with the specification, sapphire crystal. These have the 6R15 calibers inside of them, and also getting that 100 meters of water resistance. The Sarb 033 probably is going to be the most popular one, but the 035 can also be mentioned here, but probably that other cornerstone from the JDM market that has just made its way over. Now, a JDM model that doesn't get talked about as much, but in terms of what this watch is delivering, is very impressive. It is a quartz watch, but a high accuracy quartz at that. Probably one of the most accurate watches you're gonna find for the money out there, and really just shows Seiko's approach to technology, and of course being a brand that revolutionized the industry with their production of quartz movements. And I'm talking about the SACM 171, or also known as the Seiko Dolce. Now this is a small watch by every pretty much standard, 33.5 millimeters with its case size and 5.3 millimeters thick. But the talking point of this watch is going to be the high accuracy quartz. We're talking precision here that's going to outdo that of the spring drive. So there is a lot to like here in terms of what you're getting, and for around $400, these seem to still be available at certain JDM sellers. It's certainly a watch to add to the list here if you do have a smaller wrist or just want some high accuracy quartz just technology inside one of your watches from Seiko. It also looks the part, it's thin on the wrist, and hits all the standard of what a modern sort of just dress watch should be, despite maybe that case size being a little bit to the smaller end. And then to round it out, looking at the collection that I think is probably the most overlooked, I've been a huge proponent of this collection. So many people were looking at the SAR models for so many years that this lineup of just family of watches I think was neglected for so long, and that is the Sarks family. Now the Sarks family has quite a few different options that you can go for, and honestly probably even more than the Sarbs in some way, or at least enough to match that. Now I own personally, and I'm wearing it right now, the Sarks 045. This was a watch that I really gravitated towards. You used to be able to get these for around $500. I don't even know if you can get them anymore, but a really cool JDM model. But you have a few different options here. You can also look at the Sarks 033. I've covered that in the past on the channel. Now that is a model that my actual brother owns, and that was his first Seiko watch that he ever owned, and he absolutely loves it. A little bit larger on the case size there at 40.8 millimeters. Might be a reason why some people out there didn't go to these compared to some of the Sarbs out there. 100 meters of water resistance. Love the blued style hands on those as well. They just look the part. The finishing on here, that glossy white dial, very striking. So enjoy that one. And then you also have the Sarks 055, which is kind of known as the baby snowflake. And if you look at this close up on the dial, for good reason why it's getting that name. But in terms of the Sarks family, sometimes I see them as almost up finished, maybe a little bit larger with the case, and maybe don't have as much of flexibility for smaller wrists when the wearability aspect compared to that of the Sarbs. But in terms of the case finish and what you're getting also with some of the dial finishing, I find it usually probably a step above some of that of the Sarb collections. So now we have a fan favorite with the Seiko 5 collection. Now the Seiko 5s in general are almost always that gateway into the world of Seiko. And I think almost every collector, if you've been into watches long enough, have probably just owned at least one. Now where to begin here, there's quite a few different options. One of my favorite creations in the last couple years from Seiko has been with the Seiko SRPE collection, or known as the Dress SKX. Perfect name to describe these things. Using the silhouette or the case architecture very similar to that in the crown position from the SKX family, and fusing it into a smaller, more compact case size with upgraded movement and nice versatility in terms of wear and specifications. 100 meters of water resistance, variety of different dials to choose from, also getting some fantastic lume for the money. This is a great everyday watch and a great cornerstone if you're looking for your first Seiko 5. Then looking into an older model, a model that I've owned, honestly, I think I may have owned like every single different variation of this over the years, and that is the SNK 800 series. So in terms of which one you want to go for, quite a few different options. I'd say the two most popular ones are going to be with the 809 with that black dial, or the 803 with that kind of, I would say, I don't even know how to describe it, maybe just like a cream dial. It looks very nice. That was a watch that I really did enjoy when I owned it for some time. Now these are watches that are certainly outdated by modern standards for Seiko 5s, but you typically can find these for around $100, give or take, depending on what variation you go for. And with that as a point of consideration, I mean, there's a lot of reason to go in the direction of these. Then to diversify our collection a little bit, get something with some rotating bezels and some different action and design styles, have to look at the Sea Urchin. This is also one of those models, along with like the bottle caps as another alternative. Probably some of the more beloved Seiko 5 models that have kind of their own DNA. There's some people that will associate these with like the Blancpain 50 Fathoms as kind of a alternative to that, and a much more affordable level. But these are very endearing designs, and I think one of fan favorite when you're talking about Seiko 5s. And then when looking and rounding out this entire Seiko 5 collection, I think you have to also look at something with some color, and that's gonna be with the SRPD 59, I think is a good recommendation. This is part of that new Seiko 5 Sports collection. This one coming with a striking orange dial. The wearing dimensions on this are gonna be essentially exactly the same as that of the SKX family that we just mentioned a little while ago. 100 meters of water resistance instead of the more pro-rated diver spec of the 200 meters with the SKX, but certainly looks the part, add a little bit of color that I think Seiko does very well, unlike many brands out there. And I think this is a great way to round out a complete Seiko 5 just collection here. Now to round us out here, we're going to look at the Seiko Purist. Now I don't want to say that this person's a snob, but if there was a such thing as a Seiko snob, this would be the type of person that we would be talking about. So to begin here, looking at that dive watch that is just epitomizing maybe the brand in their most up performance possible. There's probably two different approaches. You can look at the Marine Masters, but you probably also want to go for maybe an LX model. Now these are watches that are priced very high at $6,000, but if you want the top of the line, Seiko dive watch, this is probably the one to go for. So the model that I looked at in the past was the SNR029. Now, the most notable thing about this watch was a lot of just the materials and the finish on this. Very, very good. I mean, the case side and what it was doing there, I mean, you're kind of emulating a lot of just the same effects that you'd find with some Zaratsu polishing from Grand Seiko. 300 meters of water resistance. This is, of course, an ISO compliant dive watch as well, a little bit larger with the case, but probably the most notable thing here also is you're getting a Seiko watch with a spring drive, the 5R65, so very capable, high accuracy also with 1 second off from perfect time every single month on typical average, plus or minus there. So you're getting that up technology with the spring drive, which I've just delved into quite a bit and explaining in the past on the channel, so definitely recommend checking out that video. But this is that Seiko Range Rover edition for their dive watch lineup, and probably is the most high level one that you can go for. Then moving into the next watch here, kind of our second pillar. Now, I talked about how dive watches are commonly associated with Seiko, but many people don't consider their history in the world of field watches. The Alpinist family can go all the way back to the 1950s. So there's history that predates that of their dive watches. And when people think of Seiko from a modern perspective, I think just you don't get enough appreciation of what they've done in the field watch perspective. Now, the model that really does emulate this transition from the earliest of watches from the family and then transitioning into that Alpinist model with their field watches and their watches made for Japanese mountaineers and explorers was this recreation of this Alpinist edition, this 1959 recreation, and this thing looks freaking amazing. Now, this one was just unveiled as a new limited edition model, but this one just looks the part. The price is, of course, going to hurt a little bit for a Seiko, but there's no question this thing is absolutely sexy to look at. This is the SJE085J1, looking at a pretty wearable dimensions to the classic wearing proportions at 36.6 millimeters, 100 meters of water resistance, and you're also getting Seiko's high-end movements with their 6L35s inside of here. But I think the star of the show is just, this is an embodiment of Seiko's history of field watches that, again, is very overlooked, and creating a modern interpretation of a model that has become so beloved in the Alpinist family. And now to round out our Seiko Purist, I think for the type of purists that we're talking about, they also have to have an appreciation for Seiko's history and just some of their most, I would say, representative watches in terms of showing how they were able to really push the envelope in many ways. When looking at the creation of automatic chronographs in the late 1960s, you always hear about the Zenith El Primero. You hear about the combination from Heuer and Breitling, as well as Hamilton kind of getting into the mix in this world. But you also have to consider Seiko and what they were doing with the 6139. There's a lot of history that is supporting that this was actually the first automatic chronograph ever introduced. Now, this is going to create a lot of different debates, so I'll just say that it was a completely revolutionary watch at the time in terms of Japanese watchmaking. The same year that this watch family came out, you're also looking at the Seiko Astron. So Seiko at this period was doing some incredible things. In regards to this watch and why I think it makes a ton of sense to round out this list is these models are in high regard. There's a ton of different dial variations that you can go for and what people are trying to find out there. Parts, as well as sourcing the right edition and model, is very difficult when you're talking about these 6139s. Maybe looking at something like the Seiko Pogue as an example, the one that was actually worn into space. There's a lot of history and things that can support there. But this family, as well as looking into these automatic chronographs from Seiko, I think holds so much just history and just embedded within those cases. And the design style is so synonymous with that period of Seiko, and they're just a ton of fun. You are going to pay a pretty penny to get one in great condition, but for somebody who is a Seiko purist, it makes sense to be looking in this direction. All right, guys, well, now that is my list of a few different paths that you could take to build a Seiko watch collection, just using one brand and how far you can stretch it. Now, I know not everybody's going to love just building a collection with one brand, but I just wanted to show how you could hypothetically do it. And love to see comments down below. Which one of these collections would be the one that you would go for? And also, if you enjoyed this and you want us to continue this in the future with other brands, please leave comments down below about what would be the brand that you'd like to see next. Also, if you did enjoy the video, thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's a great indication that you guys want to see more of these style of videos, and really would appreciate it as it does help out the channel. Also, definitely check out that Seiko watch blog in the description. Over like 70 to 100, I lost count honestly, but it's a lot of Seiko watches that you should just be aware of. So definitely check out that blog down below. Baldassarre.com as well, full authorized dealer of over 30 brands. So if you're in the market for any watch, definitely don't hesitate to go check it out and also book a time with one of our watch specialists. If you have any questions, this is something very new that we're doing and I'm very excited about, very proud to be offering this as well. Any questions on our site about a watch you're looking to purchase, definitely don't hesitate to book some time. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.